This week, another first for WC21 UK Productions Limited as we put a legendary prehistoric site on video for the first time. And we'll also be unpacking its fascinating story, how the Victorians knew that it was a really important place, but it would be another 80 to 90 years before its true significance became known. Wahey! Because out of the many hundreds of Neolithic axes that have been found that come from the Great Langdale axe factory, there is only one that still has its wooden handle, and that axe is now in the British Museum. It came from where we have got exclusive access to look to today. And when filming on a beach, always check that you're not going to be cut off by a channel like that. I've now got wet feet for you lot. I really can't blame you lot, can I? I bring it upon myself. Out near Sellafield, my nuclear birth. And well done to those of you who spotted the Public Image Limited quotes last week. I think SK8 Betty was one of them. May the road rise with you as well, my dear. There's a real irony for me in that this settlement that we're going to have exclusive access to today is on the coastal plain in Cumberland. And yet it is very close to the ominous spectacle of Sellafield. I better be careful with the old fake drone today. I believe they shoot them out the sky. Before we get to it, over to me in the studio probably for a quick recap on the Great Langdale Neolithic Axe Factory. Discovered in the 1930s and investigated by the appropriately named Claire Fell in the 1940s, the dramatic scree run on the side of the pikeofstickle in Langdale was found to be the result of Neolithic mining, commencing around 3700 BC and in operation for 500 years. Nobody knows why these early settlers chose to mine the greenstone in such a difficult place. Many assume it lent the axes some kind of ritualistic significance. Axe roughouts were produced at the site and then shipped out to low-lying settlements to be finished, and in pretty much every single report you'll find on this subject, Ehenside Tarn near Beckermet is cited as the example. The axes turn up everywhere, and Professor Bill Cummins found that of 1,840 Neolithic axes found across the country that he examined, a staggering 27% originated from the Great Langdale Axe Factory. Typically 11 inches long, 3 to 4 wide, and weighing 2 pounds, all in old money. This was a Neolithic wonder tool that played a huge role in the deforestation of the land. But whilst the Ehenside Tarn production facility is off mentioned, I could find no video content showing what it looks like, nor exactly where it was, and that sounded very much like an opportunity and indeed a moral duty for this channel to address. But it wasn't going to be easy. This is no neat and tidy English heritage site with plastic swords in the gift shop. The remains of the Tarn lie in remote country, on private land, and nowhere near a public footpath. Look at that, we've got a coastal railway line as well. That will appeal to certain viewers, you know who I'm talking to. And on the subject of viewers, I just wanted to say thanks to Rob Grabowski. Hope I've pronounced that correctly. You know, last week I was moaning about not having any younger viewers. Well, he told me that he watches every week with his 5-year-old daughter, which I thought was great. She refers to me as the Ant Aquarium, who goes around looking at rocks and stuff. I love that. Apparently she thinks that I might be Rob's dad because he wears a hat a bit like mine. I've come inland a bit into the treeless landscape. Treeless because of the work of Neolithic axes. What a beautiful caterpillar. I didn't stand on it, obviously. Now, the Ehenside River, that's the important thing. It comes down out of the Lake District Fells, out to the coast near Sellafield, and it's this location where we find our settlement. I know I keep going on about it, but it's now a almost completely treeless landscape, and it was the Neolithic settlers that did that. And oh, look what we've got here in the churchyard of St. Bridget. Saxon/Viking crosses. If only Schofield hadn't burnt his bridges, eh? Beautiful, eh? I am, incidentally, in discussion with Stuart Maconey at the moment, so there may be a new iteration of our Saxon crosses series at some point down the line. But Anglian, Saxon, Viking crosses, that's a story for another day. The reason I wanted to come here was to talk about what happened. So 13,000 years ago, the ice melted, and across that Irish Sea, it wasn't called that then, obviously, came Mesolithic hunter-gatherers all the way from Spain, and they populated this stretch of the Cumberland coast. It wasn't called that then. You know, it's interesting. The people of Cumberland, fiercely and quite rightfully so, are proud of their independence, and DNA analysis shows that a very large percentage of them have been here for a very long time. I wonder how many of them, though, associate themselves with incomers from Spain. And then, around 6,000 years ago, news got to these parts of a newfangled thing called farming. And that's where our story begins. They had to clear the forest and they had to settle. Gate opening and closing sequence. Welcome to Glanaventa, the Roman market by the shore, nowadays known as Ravenglass, and the location of the first ever weekly episode of the Roman Gazette. But obviously we're not here today to talk about the Romans. We are talking about things that were happening 3,500, 4,000 years before they turned up with all their fancy pants, underfloor heating, sanitation, and lovely days of family entertainment at the local amphitheatre. And look at this, David. We have a railway line. It is working, I'm afraid. I know you prefer ones that aren't. But why have I come here as part of our story about the Neolithic production of axes on the coastline hereabouts? Well, it's abundantly clear why the Romans liked this place. You've got this fantastic natural harbour here, protected by these spits of land over there. It's absolutely perfect. Now, over there on Driggsands, they have found slag from the Iron Age and Roman period, but more importantly for us, they've found evidence of Neolithic tool production. And then over there on Eskmills, more sand dunes over that side of the harbour, they have done the pollen analysis, which shows that this area, at the time the Neolithic people were becoming Neolithic and starting to settle and farm, it was all covered in trees. Oak, ash, elder, right the way down to the edge of the shore. I find it absolutely incredible and fascinating that this open treeless, virtually treeless landscape today is as a result of what people were doing here 6,000 years ago. Before we head off to our location, I just wanted to see if I could get an aerial shot to show you the Neolithic people's effect on the Ehenside Valley. So let's get that up. Oh, Google overlay it is then. Here's the course of the river, and here's the settlement that we're going to be having a look at. Now, pollen samples from the tarn at Ehenside, along with Mockerkin and Barnfield tarns, plus the sand dunes that we saw at Eskmills, show the permanent change from woodland to grassland with bracken. So that is the landscape that our Neolithic axe producers would have known. Here's the route that Bing Maps suggests to get the axe roughouts from the mine to the finishing site at our settlement. It's mainly using the Roman route, a staggering 25.5 miles. Canoes, tree rollers, it really is mind-blowing. So the site of our lakeside settlement is, this river is really important. It may be the way in their little canoes that they brought the roughouts down to be finished at the settlement. If you try to find the location of Ehenside Tarn using Tinternet, you'll struggle a little bit. Although on Google Maps I did find it was pinpointed, and there was even an enthusiastic review, but that's the wrong place. As the Historic England records, Gateway records show, its real name is Gibb Tarn. As a little humorous aside, as I was filming the drone destruction scene, a lady came up to me to tell me that I wasn't allowed to do that because of the rules set down by the people at Sellafield. Anyhow, it all ended up as a bit of a laugh when I explained that I was an antiquarian just doing my thing. Right, do you want to see it? Without further ado, let's go and have a look at Ehenside Tarn. What actually happened was that I came here yesterday. It's about a 2-hour drive for me, and there was no one at the farm because the plan had been to knock at the farm and see if I could get permission. Anyhow, I popped back a little bit later and I actually met the farmer. He didn't want me to go down yesterday because there were cows in the field, but he very kindly gave me permission to come back today. Apparently the cows aren't going to be there. I did ask him if he got many antiquarians, and the answer to that was no. A few years ago he had some SSSI sort of people. No antiquarian interest in this site. I think he said he'd been here for 20 years. I bet you can hardly contain your excitement, can you? Let's go and have a look to it. Wow, there it is. Ehenside Tarn. I think I'm right to say that of the 3 small tarns that we have today in this marshy area, which the landowner has asked me not to go into because of health and safety reasons, obviously. Whether it was 3 back then, we don't know. If you look at Derbyshire's drawings, it seems to suggest that the 2 at this end were part of one tarn. The way this was discovered was James Quayle, the tenant farmer, was draining it to try and improve the land, and that's when he made his discoveries here. I think I'm going to go and stand on what is surely Quayle's drain, the very process that led to the incredible discoveries here. So in 1869, tenant farmer James Quayle wanted to drain these tarns and improve the land. As he did that, things were coming to the surface, were coming to light, which he recognised were historically important. Over the next couple of years, he involved others. There was a Kenworthy who reported via the Whitehaven Herald in 1870. So what came out of here? Well, they found 6 fireside halves, showing that there'd been a Neolithic lakeside settlement here around these tarns. They found stone items, most of which they confused and didn't really understand, the grindstones and the axe rubbers that we now know were part of the process of the industrial process of preparing the Langdale axes for market. Well, they thought they were clubs and grindstones for corn. They found incredible timber items here, preserved by the conditions, including a couple of paddles, and that led Kenworthy to get very carried away. He imagined that the island that you might be able to sort of still see in some sort of overlay with the fake drone there, it's all dried out, but he thought the island in the middle of the lake was man-made and that they paddled their little Neolithic canoes across to that. In 1871, Robert Dukinfield, Derbyshire, and Derbyshire is spelt in a posh way as well. What a proper antiquarian name that is. He arrived on the scene to bring some antiquarian seriousness to matters, and he cut a trench in 1871. His stratigraphical analysis of the ground here was confirmed in later work in 1957 to be pretty accurate. And the fascinating thing that showed was, I mean, he hauled trees out of here, and it showed that these tarns were once surrounded by temperate rainforest. And it wasn't until 1965 to 1967 that another Neolithic lakeside settlement was excavated in Britain, and that was at Storrs Moss in Lancashire. Of course, the Victorians did understand the importance of their finds here, and Derbyshire's report is great. Do have a look at it if you've got the time. It's worth a read. They understood it was important, but in researching the vegetation changes in this area, I found the 1969 report about the same, and it makes a reference to the stone axe found here at Ehenside Tarn. And it refers to the fact that at that point, so 1969, it had only just been identified as having come from the Great Langdale Axefactory. I do love Victorian high and mightiness, actually. I just want to read this extract from Ken Worthy's report for the Whitehaven Herald in November 1870. He said the following, it's wonderful. The probability is that they were all formed for the lake dwellings of the early Britons at a remote and savage age, when the interior of the country had not been penetrated by colonists from other lands. Later filmed insert. I forgot to mention how the Victorians knew that this was a Neolithic, or Stone Age as they preferred to say back then, settlement. Well, it was because there was a complete absence of any metal. No bronze, no iron. This is what an antiquarian footling looks like. Now, as well as finding things like a 6,000-year-old paddle and the only Langdale stone axe with its handle still attached, they also found earthenware items here, including items from the Yorkshire wolds and, wait for this, Peterborough ware, using goods here, for want of a better word, that were from miles away. I am so grateful to the farmer, a shy and retiring chap. Really grateful that he's allowed me to come here today to put this on video, this legendary tarn on video for the first time ever on WC21 UK Productions Limited. Now, he was a bit nervous. I think he's had some problems in the past. So he's not expecting, I would imagine, loads of antiquarians to turn up here crawling all over the place. So hopefully you can make do with this. I do enjoy reading Victorian antiquarian reports, but as ever, there's always an element of frustration sort of buried within them. Derbyshire, spelt in that posh way with the I in the middle, I really like that. He refers to the fact that within memory, at the time he was writing, a nearby field which was called Stonefield had a megalith in it that had been toppled and buried for farming efficiency. I am equally fascinated by the dramatic effect the Neolithic people had on this landscape. I'm sort of assuming what we're looking at now is an enclosure landscape, but I thought we should do a bit of citizen science, so I'm going to apply a little bit of hooper. So 30 yards. Need to mark that with something, don't I? I've put my hat there. Right, here goes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 28, 29, 30. So that's my 30 yards mapped out, but straight away I've seen a problem. Look at this. I'm not too sure what we do in terms of the hooper rule when we've got what is clearly an earth bank with old stones embedded in it in that way. Anyhow, let's give them a count anyway and see what happens. So we've got hawthorn, so that's 1. We don't count blackberries, do we? I think I called those black currants when I did this with allotment fox. I was obviously nervous. We've got gorse, so that's 2. Another one there. Don't know what that one is. So that's 3. It's all hawthorn and gorse by the looks of it. Possibly another one up there. 4. Oh, yes, actually. Yeah. 4. So what's that? 4 times 110 plus 30. So that's 470 years, isn't it, according to Hooper? So actually, it's a bit older than I thought. It's probably predates enclosure, but I don't know about that earth bank. That could have been there a lot longer, couldn't it? And I'm not saying Neolithic, but that might be a lot older than that. I'm back at the river now. We're sophisticated. We film these things out of sequence. Now, I did bump into the farmer. I'm so grateful to him for letting me do this today. What a decent chap. Anyhow, on this occasion, Hooper has been discredited. He got a grant about 20 years ago and replanted all the hedgerows then. Antiquarian magic, antiquarian gold dust. What a place. How many generations lived in this lakeside settlement, making their finished products, their Langdale axes, that revolutionary Neolithic tool that went out from here. I mean, this is a long way from Langdale in itself, but spread across the whole of the country, accounting for 27% of all Neolithic axes found in the UK. Amazing. It's interesting because whenever you read anything about the Langdale Axe Factory, you always hear about Ehenside Tarn, and yet can you find anything online about it? Pictures, videos, etc.? No, I found one picture of it in researching this video, so I feel as though WC's 21 UK Productions Limited has done what it exists for. It's putting the obscure, neglected places out there and recording them as well for future posterity. Let's have a look at the Millennium Garden and see whether my suspicions are confirmed. Yep, as I thought, neglected. There's no money to look after it. We had such high hopes, didn't we, around the time of the millennium? Where did everything go wrong? Do you know how I cope with it? I go back 6,000 years into the past. Just as a brief respite from the seriousness of this week's episode, I keep calling them episodes, I want to talk about this. It's my latest in a series of bizarre YouTube-related things. I've been meaning to mention it for a few weeks. But, I don't know, about a month or so ago, I was working upstairs in my studio and Mrs. WC21 UK Productions Limited shouted up to say there was somebody there. And I came down and it was this chap. It was Jimmurray. Now, I have to say, I didn't know who Jim was, but it turns out that he is, or was, very famous, an expert on whiskey. He publishes the Whiskybible every year. The 2025 edition is due quite soon. Anyhow, he enjoys the channel. He used his journalistic skills to track me down, and while he was in the area, popped round to say hello. He had an interesting story. We went and had a pint of Thwaites bitter as well, which was nice. He had an interesting story. Jim was cancelled a few years ago and fell from favour. He's still persevering. He's still publishing this. And if you like your whiskey, I recommend getting a copy of it. It is incredibly detailed and thorough. And obviously he gives his opinion on it as well. But yeah, poor Jim was cancelled. I think part of the reason he visited was to warn me against the danger of cancellation. I'll do my best, Jim, but I can't promise it. I don't think I'd ever get cancelled for describing women as sexy, which is what happened to Jim. I'll probably be cancelled for trashing the opinions of the experts. Anyhow, Jim, good luck with your endeavours. I hope you prevail against the cancellation. Interestingly, the person who dobbed Jim in and got him cancelled has now gone on to be the new whiskey guru. The great thing about the Coastal catalogue is the endings are easy. You just get one of these and you throw it in there.